A man say to his woman, I got me a dream. She says, eat your eggs, they getting cold.
Legend.
A man say to his woman, I got me a dream. She says, eat your eggs, they getting cold.
Icon.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Oscar winner. Civil rights leader.
I became interested in the civil rights struggle out of a necessity to survive.
And perhaps the greatest actor who ever lived. The Black press remembers Sidney Poitier.
I arrived in Hollywood at the age of 22 in a time different than today's.
Join us on Let It Be Known. And welcome to a special edition of Let It Be Known on this Monday, January 10th, 2022. He was born an icon, a legend, a civil rights leader, a superstar of the stage and screen. This morning, we remember the actor of actors, the elegant, smooth, and an incredible man of grace, the trailblazing Sidney Poitier, who died on January 6th at the age of 94. We are going to look at Sidney Poitier's stage accomplishments, his accomplishments on film and as a director, and of course, his life as the greatest actor who ever lived. First, let's bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin Chavis. Dr. Chavis, good morning.
Good morning, STACY Brown. And we're very grateful that we start this Monday morning off with this special edition in tribute to Sidney Poitier. On behalf of Karen Carter Richards and the 230 African-American owned newspapers and media companies across the country, we're glad to be participating and start this week off with Let It Be Known.
Yeah, and a little bit later, we're also going to bring you a brief conversation Let It Be Known had with Sidney Poitier's longtime colleague, actor Bill Cosby. But first, let's bring on our guest this morning. From Rolling Out is Munson Steed, James Wright of the Washington Informer, and playwright Ursula Battle, who also contributes to the Baltimore Times. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
And Ursula, I'm glad to have you. Ursula is an accomplished playwright. She's an author, but she also was inspired a lot in her plays by Sidney Poitier. Let's talk a little bit, Ursula, about how Sidney, we know that on stage there was a Raisin in the Sun, of course, and there was others that Lilies of the Field, of course, but A Raisin in the Sun is really what people talk about when they talk about Sidney Poitier on stage. How was he able to, how did you extract from that?
Well, first of all, I'll say that he was a man, as you mentioned, an icon. He was a pioneer that did it his way. And one of the things that struck me, and I hope that I'm walking in his footsteps on this, is that if one road doesn't work out or one route doesn't work out, you don't give up. He was persistent, and he didn't take no and for an answer, and he did it his way. And so for me, I think that in the plays that I've written, going back to the first play, stepped out on faith and didn't necessarily know what I was doing in terms of producing a play. I knew that I could write a play, but actually producing a play was something that was a journey for me. And so, like Poitier, what I set out to do was to put a play on stage, put a play up on stage, that is, and it didn't necessarily mean going the, I guess, the everyday way to do it. So for me, I would say his trailblazing ways, his persistence. He was a man that had grace, and I'm hoping that for me as a playwright, I'm exhibiting that as well. But he has impacted me in so many different ways, and for me as a playwright, as an African American female playwright, I believe that he laid the path that allowed playwrights of color like myself to come behind him and to not only be able to write shows, but to be able to direct shows and to be able to produce shows. So for me, that was probably the greatest impact that Sidney Poitier had on my life as a writer.
Yeah, and Munson Steve, of Rolling Out is a pleasure to have you. We know Rolling Out does a lot. Probably the best if you want to find some great entertainment coverage. You go to Rolling Out. It gets no better than Rolling Out. But you know, when you think about Sidney's career, No Way Out, The Defiant Ones, and of course, In the Heat of the Night. What stood out for you, Munson, when you think about it? I know a lot, but is there anything in particular you want to share with us that really pushed the envelope, maybe stood out even more for you when it comes to the great Sidney Poitier?
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate what the NMPA is doing here, Stacey. But I think it's just integrating Sidney Poitier into the consciousness of this millennial generation. I think the coverage right now that you're doing, the coverage that the papers are doing, and digitally across the country to educate the distinction, the very elegance and grace that Black men can display and he displayed is on stage right now. It is an education for Blacks to understand that in being a celebrity, there is a Black movement. And we continue to have a Black movement right now here on our Black consciousness. And we hope at Rolling Out that many of the hip hop generation, many of the millennials will see this moment as a moment to add to their distinction. That slap, that dignified approach that he had to playing his position and still being an activist for the entire Black community, and knowing that in everything that he did, he represented the Black community. He leaned into Black and was a true Black angel here on earth.
Yeah, and you know, you make a great point, Munson. Sidney Poitier, one thing he never did was embarrass Black America. He never embarrassed himself. James, I know that you wanted to share some insights as well, but when you know Munson brought up something that's really, really interesting, because in Sidney Poitier's contract, maybe many don't know this, on In the Heat of the Night, his thing was, if I got slapped by this white man, in his contract says he slapped him back. And there was a lot of pushback, but Sidney Poitier, I see we lost James. So I'm going to go to Dr. Chavez, because Dr. Chavez, you know, Sidney Poitier, and along the lines on what I'm saying, he really stood up for civil rights.
Well, again, as all of the colleagues have said, Sidney Poitier was a gentleman, a Black gentleman. He had grace, but he also had a ferocity about him. He had an audacity about him. And in his contract, it reflected that he was not going to allow himself to be disrespected on film unless he, in kind, returned the favor on film to whoever was disrespecting him. And of course, that scene of him, being slapped, and then he slaps the man who slapped him very quickly. That epitomizes what Sidney Poitier did as a point person. But the thing that I want to say about Sidney Poitier is that Sidney Poitier and Harold Belafonte were one of the strongest supporters of the civil rights movement. And a lot of times, actors like Sidney Poitier, they don't get the credit that they should of being freedom fighters. He was great on the stage, but some of Sidney Poitier's greatest moments was off stage, was off camera, was off movie. He financially supported the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He financially supported the civil rights movement. And at every turn, he and Belafonte together were stalwarts in demanding freedom, justice, and equality, not only for Black people, but for all communities of color in America and throughout the world. He also was a staunch supporter of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And of course, he loved Haiti. He always commented on what was going on in Haiti.
Yeah, and we know too that he was born in the Bahamas, right?
Yes.
And he was actually born in Miami. His family was from the Bahamas, and they actually was taking a trip to Miami, and he was born on that trip. Ursula, we also know about Raising in the Sun, Lilies of the Field, To Sir with Love. His movies, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, they were statements, right? Even in the Defiant Ones. I remember in the Defiant Ones with he and Tony Curtis, he was not to be outdone in any way by Tony Curtis, who was a huge star at that time. And we're talking about the late 50s and the 60s.
Yes. Amazing, amazing. And again, one of the things that I admire so much about him. But again, he did it his way. He would not take on roles in which he would portray African Americans in a stereotypical way. I read somewhere that I think it was during maybe the 1950s or 60s sometime, that he was offered I think it was $750 a week, and he turned it down because he felt that the role was a stereotypical role, which, well, by that standard these days, it's probably still a lot of money. But back then, that was truly quite a bit of money, and he turned it down. So again, he was a man that did it his way, and he was not to be outdone on screen or stage by Tony Curtis or anybody that he starred alongside of. He was just a man that stood out. He was truly a star in his own right, and just amazing to watch on stage. I remember not just his stage credits, but I remember growing up and going to the movies with my family at, I think it was Collins Drive-In, and seeing Uptown Saturday Night. And I still remember that movie, and his directorship, his acting, again, as Dr. Chavis mentioned, his work outside of acting, as far as civil rights, is truly amazing. And I think that his contributions to the world, not just theater, not just the movies, or entertainment, that is, as a whole, I think his contributions to the world as a humanitarian is immeasurable. And again, we owe a great debt to Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, and you mentioned Uptown Saturday Night. It was part of a trilogy with Bill Cosby and Harry Belafonte,
Yes.
Jimmy J.J. Walker, John
Yes.
Amos. It goes on and on. Denise Nichols. One of the things that we were able to do this past weekend was have a conversation with Bill Cosby after the death of Sidney Poitier. We're going to give you a short snippet right now of that conversation. Okay, when it's ready.
Stars of stage and screen, politics, and higher education came out to the stage one at a time to speak. I brought with me paperback his autobiography. And I said, of all the quote unquote groundbreaking movies that Sidney starred in, this book is the real story of this man and his journey. I am honored to have been close enough to him in work and serious matters.
Yes, so that, and to put that into just a little bit more context, we called Mr. Cosby. He was not aware. He was sleeping. He was not aware of the death of Sidney Poitier, so he had to collect his thoughts, and he spoke to us about that. He also, Dr. Chavis, he mentioned in the conversation that Sidney Poitier was perhaps one of the more underpaid, if not the most underpaid actor director in the movie business. He was talking about how shortchanged Hollywood was with Sidney Poitier, but yet he talked about the dignity that Sidney Poitier carried on with. I know you have some thoughts on that, especially when it comes to pay equality in Hollywood.
Well, I think it's still an issue, not just in the 50s and the 60s, that African Americans perform. African Americans present their creativity, their artistic genius, but very often other people go to the bank off of our creative talent. And certainly, what Bill Cosby mentioned to you, Stacey, it was true for Sidney Poitier. It was true for all of the actors and actresses of that time. But even going forward, and I think what Munson said earlier, I think as everybody has these tributes to Bill Cosby, we hope that our young people, our millennials, our Generation Z, would capture some of the essence, some of the truth of Sidney Poitier. We are a blessed people. We're not a cursed people. But very often, the blessings of our talent, when it comes to the economic side, when it comes to the business side, the financial side, oftentimes runs into challenges. Now, obviously, there are some brothers and sisters today who have overcome that. But by and large, we still have to work on the economic equity question in Hollywood, the economic equity question in the recording industry, the economic equity question in professional sports and entertainment across the board. So these are issues that are not just several decades ago, but they're issues in 2022 that also we need to focus on. I'm hoping that everyone listening today or viewing today will rededicate ourselves to pursue excellence. To me, if I could pick one word that epitomizes Sidney Poitier, it is excellence. Not just the pursuit of excellence, but the attainment of excellence and representing the excellence in everything he did and touched.
Yeah, one of our viewers, Patricia Mellison, says he was a great man with distinction. My hope is we are preparing others to follow in his footsteps. Many other stalwarts are passing on. It's important. James, thanks for getting back with us. James Wright of the Washington Informer. James, I want to give you an opportunity to give us some of your thoughts on the great Sidney Poitier.
Well, you know, that movie, In the Heat of the Night, the most compelling part of that movie, and Dr. Chavis alluded to this, is the fact that he slapped that white man. As a matter of, and growing up and talking to people about that movie, even when I was a boy, that was the thing that really impressed people, that this black man slapped a white man on on the movie screen. And we were in Texas, so that's something that wasn't very common, as you can pretty well guess. The thing about Sidney Poitier is that he used his art and activism in order to enhance the black cause. I would even go as far as to say that Sidney Poitier was the actor or entertainer that Paul Robeson always wanted to be, but was unable to be because of some communist accusations in the 1950s from Joe McCarthy and foolishness like that. When I think of Sidney Poitier, I think about a man who was a real man. And I don't want to get in trouble here, but he did not put on a dress in order to further his career. And I'm not pointing any fingers, but I think that he exemplified being a man's man. And I'm saying that in a non-sexist fashion. And so he stuck with his craft and he did it well.
Yeah, and I want to go back to, thanks, James, for that observation. I want to go back to Munson Steve. Munson, he was also a really accomplished director. Some of the credits was Buck and the Preacher. Many may remember that. A Warm December, of course, the trilogy with Bill Cosby, but also Stir Crazy, which with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, which was the highest grossing film that was directed by an African American at the time. Munson, some thoughts on that? The fact that Sidney was not just a one-trick pony, if you will.
Well, thanks for that, Stacey. I think the mastering being a black man is what we're looking at. He is a master in that moment in this industry of what it is to be able to understand the craft, the industry, and master it. we're looking at a master. When you talk about the conversation that they're having about him, here's a true genius of his craft. We should acknowledge that he mastered both himself and how he presented himself, but also his craft. So when we speak to director, to actor, it's kind of understanding development of, you're in this business, let me master the craft. So he would have always had it. When you think he's award-winning, master of craft. When you think of the understanding of his commitment to humanity and to his people, Black people, he mastered that craft. When you talk about dignity, self, intelligence, growth as a person to demonstrate to others, he mastered that craft. I think that the spiritual journey that he showcased in his professional and his personal development and showcase for us should inspire us. He is a true master. I think those are, and I think he's a true genius in the approach. I think that the words that are used are not quite appropriate often right now because he is a genius. We should say that out loud. We've had the opportunity to observe a genius, and we should understand that what is. This is a savant that we're observing. If he had more, then we would have seen more. But he gave us all enough treasures that we could take something away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And I just want to go back, and everyone, even in our chat, a lot of our audience members continue to talk about the slap. And one of the points that David Youngblood makes is that it was 350 years in the making. And you think about in that context, right? African Americans for 350 years, just to borrow from David Youngblood, we've been called boy. We've been called nigger, we've been called everything but our names. And Sidney Poitier in that movie, and some may say it was just a movie, it was more than just that. Mm-hmm. That moment, there was more than just that, right? Dr. Tibbs, they call me Mr. Tibbs. Mr. Tibbs. That was the real key there. I'm not a boy, I'm your equal, if not better than you.
Well, again, I think, first of all, you have a great panel on today. And I think if you listen to what each of us are saying about Sidney Poitier, it all comes together. And something also that mentioned about consciousness. When Steve Biko did what he did in South Africa, it enhanced the Black consciousness. When Mandela spending all those years in prison, it enhanced the Black consciousness. What Sidney Poitier did, not only with the slap, but his elegant grace, it enhanced Black manhood. It enhanced Black fatherhood. It enhanced Black familyhood. It enhanced Black consciousness. It enhanced the Black press. Keep in mind, the Black press really, formalized. The reason why everybody knows about the slap, because the Black press kept that slap over and over and over again. The white press tend to question why the movie industry even allowed Sidney Poitier to do that. Mm-hmm. So the consciousness, I think, is so important. Even today, every time I hear the term Black Lives Matter, I say, I'm going to make sure now that we are conscious of what we are saying. What does it mean? Not just the words out of our mouth, but what does it mean? What are we going to do? How are we going to organize? How are we going to perform? And with Bill Cosby and Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier, we should be asking ourselves, what am I going to achieve next? What am I going to achieve today? And how am I going to apply the God-given genius that I've been given to make sure that what I achieve has excellence, has personification and conscience for the masses of our people throughout the African diaspora?
Yeah, and Munson, I think another one of the many lessons, right, we learned here too with Sidney Poitier, as a child, as a teen, as a young child, he was always into trouble. And in fact, they had him ticketed for reform school. They had him ticketed for prison, or at the very least, do no good, doing no good. But he found his niche on that stage. I believe he was maybe 15 or 16 years old when he got a break on that stage. Someone gave him a chance, and he took off from there. That's a lesson for us all, right? Adversity is going to come, but it's what we do with that adversity, right?
Well, I think there's a predeterminance of health. There's a predeterminance of opportunity. we know that given opportunity and given instruction, that our Black youth, Black young adults can actually excel. That's what that's actually demonstrating. I think that they're playing that way too high. I think we've got to understand that once again, this person was a savant, and savants find their way given just an opportunity. It was the collaboration of Black collective. Even when he was training, he trained among the Black best. And I think Black excellence is what we're demonstrating. So the language when we talk about Sidney Poitier needs to talk about Black collective thought, and that Black savants exist in this society, and that we need to introduce all children and celebrate Sidney Poitier's Day as a holiday for Black people. Let's not let this celebration end for Sidney Poitier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to conclude that thought on how Sidney got started, he made a deal with the American Negro Theater in New York City to receive acting lessons in exchange for working as a janitor. He eventually made his way to the stage, filling in for none other than Harry Belafonte in their production of Days of Our Youth. So Sidney was he took advantage of situations. He just didn't let defeat. He was not going to always be a janitor, right, Ursula?
That's right. That's right. His story is truly amazing. His story is truly amazing, and I think it also lends itself to why, as someone mentioned, we have to reach back and we have to make sure that we help our youth. And a lot of times they're written off, but I read that he was working as a dishwasher, and he was at the restaurant where he worked at, and another waitress, I think it was a waitress or someone that worked there with him, took an interest in him, and took the time in the evening to read newspapers with him, to help him with his diction and to help him with his grammar, to help him with his reading. And it helped him a lot. And so if we just take the time, as someone mentioned, to invest in our youth, just give some time to not write them off, they could become another Harry Belafonte. We have to take the time and train them and not give up on them. And, just a few minutes of time, maybe in a week or a day, could change the course of someone's life. They could become another Harry Belafonte, the first Black man actor to win the Oscar. But we have to take the time and invest in him, just like someone did me, just like I'm sure someone did with the other panelists that are here today. And again, I have a great deal of respect and gratitude for the contributions of the great Sidney Poitier.
Hey, Stacey, I just want to make a quick point. If you watch Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, the maid in that particular movie, she wasn't very well known at that time, but Isabel Sanford was the maid who played in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And as we all know, she was on All in the Family in the 70s, and of course, the matron on The Jeffersons. So it just kind of shows how whether he helped her or not along in her career, I don't know, but it just shows the kind of synergy that he had.
That's a great point, James. Thanks for highlighting that. You're absolutely right. And Dr. Chavis, and I know we're running short on time, but Dr. Chavis, one of the things I'm sure you probably think about when you think about Sidney Poitier, Cry the Beloved Country, which was set in South Africa during the time of apartheid. He was defiant in that sense that we're going to do this because we need to highlight what's going on here in South Africa.
Absolutely. At Mandela's inauguration, Sidney Poitier was there. And I remember having a conversation with him. The thing I just want to note about Sidney Poitier, even after all of his accomplishments, he never rested. He always looked forward to the next project. He loved the Bahamas, his native land, and he was always concerned that the Caribbean was not getting enough attention, particularly by Black Americans. And he he always wrote columns also from time to time for the National Newspaper Publishers Association, the NNPA. So Sidney Poitier, Bill Cosby, Herb Belafonte, they knew the importance of the Black press. So I think that this discussion today, Stacey, as Munson mentioned and others have mentioned, we should continue to highlight the contributions of Sidney Poitier. We should continue to highlight the contributions of James Baldwin. We had so many heroes and sheroes that have made invaluable contributions to our long ongoing struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. And that's why the Black press is important. If the Black press doesn't emphasize these points, not just when somebody passes, but to keep those legacies alive, to keep those memories alive, to keep that consciousness alive, that's our mission.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Chavis. And Munson, I want to give you a last thought on this as well. Again, we've heard so much about, of course, not only Sidney Poitier's life, but how he uplifted Black America in particular, but how he really put us in a different light that we didn't often see on screen or anywhere else.
I think that is a true testament to all of the civil rights Black actors that we're truly in front of. If you're around Ossie Davis learning, then clearly you're going to be one of the best. He was in that circumstance. But I would like to make sure that we don't celebrate him without talking about the fact that he wrote an autobiography for all of our Black families. We're getting ready to have Black History Month. Why don't we all celebrate him by reading his autobiography? I mean, at blackbookstore.com, we literally have books there, but go to any Black bookstore and buy a book and read it to you, your family, your grandchildren, and share that knowledge so you can see his entire life. I mean, this is a true body of work that he wanted us to have. And it's important that we read autobiographies on Black people to be steeped in their entire process, not just the sound bites of the news moment, but the true legacy that he wanted us by participating in an autobiography about his life. So let's celebrate and educate us about the nuances that aren't being told in the news, but he's made available by taking the time to write books directly so that his life and his legacy would be heard and read and interpreted in his own voice.
Yeah, and that was the gist of the phone call we had with Bill Cosby over the weekend. He really pushed that same thing, Munson. That autobiography will tell you everything you need to know about Sidney Poitier and more things you just never thought of. And so you're absolutely right. It's a must read for fans and non-fans. Read it and you'll learn so much more. Ursula battle stage plays and contributed to the Baltimore Times. Give us your closing thoughts on Sidney Poitier today.
Well, thank you again, Stacey. I'll just close with this. I'll just say I had an opportunity covering an event for, I believe it was the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper some years ago. I had an opportunity to meet Sidney Poitier. I'll never forget that moment. The grace, and so many things I had saw that he exhibited on screen. In that moment, in his presence, it was like, oh, I'm here with I'm here with an icon. I'm here with a pioneer. It was a magical, blessed moment in my life. I'll never forget it. Standing in the presence of Mr. Poitier. It's something that will always resonate with me. Just to be in his company was truly magnificent. A wonderful moment for me. I'll never forget it. And so I just wanted to share that I had an opportunity to actually meet him, to actually shake his hand, to actually speak to him and him say something to me. And so that was just a wonderful moment of my life. And again, I thank him for all of his contributions. And as the panel has mentioned so many times, we need to do what we can to forever preserve his memory and his contributions, which I don't believe will ever be forgotten.
Absolutely. James Wright of the Washington Informer, your closing thought on Sidney Poitier this morning.
I think that his career and his life should be studied not only by theater students, not only students of film or entertainment, but by all students, because he was a very comprehensive man, which has been consistently mentioned today. He was an activist and an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chambers, of course, your closing thoughts this morning.
Long live the memory and legacy of Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly applaud that. We thank you all again. Ursula Battle Stage Plays. Y'all should check her out. You might see the next Sidney Poitier on one of her plays. Check her out. James White, Washington Informer, Munson Steed, of course, rolling out. We thank you all, and don't forget to join us. The Black Press's Midwinter Conference. It's going to be in Florida, January 19th. We will be there through the 22nd. Social distance, all the safety protocols will be adhered to as the Black Press gets together to observe its Midwinter Conference. And the great Stephanie Mills will be joining us for a special performance live there at the Diplomat in Hollywood, Florida. NMPA I always say slash. It's not slash, y'all. It's NMPA-events.com. Check us out there to join us, to register. We look forward to seeing you in Hollywood, Florida. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, we remember the great Sidney Poitier.
Yes.